It's week 12 of the Read What You Own challenge, and I may have cheated. Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and I am participating in the 4th annual Read What You Own challenge, formerly known as the 100 Book Challenge, where its creator, Criminali, challenges people to read a certain number of books they already own before buying another book. I am a co-host, along with MJ at Reading This Life, and Crystal at Fiber Artsy. There are a number of ways you can participate. I will link a video in the description of this one so you can get more of the rules and the history of this challenge. I am doing the Read What You Own 25,000 Pages challenge rather than a book count challenge. I may have cheated last week. In my announcement video, I do have certain exceptions where I'm allowed to buy another book. One of them is for book groups or book events on BookTube. There's also from the year before where I said I'm allowed to replace or upgrade books that I already own to a different format. I don't think I specified that I could do that this year, but it's sort of a long-going exception. And I also said that I can buy some collectibles. But what happened is that I was picking up some books from the library for my in-person book group, and the books that I read for my book group do not count towards this challenge, even though I read them, but they had a library sale going on. And I had to pick up 3 books. This is The Complete Stories of Conan by Robert E. Howard. The thing is, I own these books in audio book format. I have actually read the first 2 volumes or listened to the first 2 volumes on audio while reading an incomplete ebook version. The ebook version that I own does not have all the stories of Robert E. Howard. It's some are still in copyright. So I got all these books because A, I'm going to be reading the 3rd book for the Cimmerian September. I already own 2 of them in audio format, and I own most of them in an ebook format, except for the 2 or 3 short stories that were in public, not in public domain. So did I cheat? I sort of have exceptions for buying these, but if I had let these sit on the shelves and Michael K. Vaughan found out about it, he would send his wizard Roger, his evil mummy wizard Roger, over to cast a curse on me because he thinks these are some of the best editions of Conan that you can buy. So that is my cheat, or maybe not. The first book I finished was Maggie's Grave by David Sodergren. He is an independent horror author living in the UK. This story is set in Scotland. It starts off on a Scottish mountain in the 1600s. There is a pregnant woman living alone on top of the mountain. The people in the village below think she is a witch, so they come to the top of the mountain to kill her with her child. But is she a witch? Maybe not, though she curses the town with her dying breath. Flash forward to modern times. The town is basically deserted. It has lost its industry, and there's only about 40 or 50 people living there. All the stores have closed, except for a bowling alley. And you're introduced to 4 young people still living in the town. Now, normally speaking, stories about young people don't thrill me too much. And the focus on these people in their early teens or late teens or early 20s kind of annoyed me just a little bit. But it appears that something has happened, and the witch on top of the mountain is coming out of her grave, and she is hell-bent on killing people in the town. And she's looking for her baby, because one of these four young people is a woman. She's unwed. She has recently had a baby. And this witch wants that baby. And she will kill everyone in her way to get it. Now, there is a bit of a surprise at the end of the story. I liked that surprise. I did sort of see it coming just a little bit, but it makes the story focused on young people because it had to be focused on young people once you know what the surprise ending is. I did like this book. I don't think it is David Sodergren's favorite book that I have read. I have read two others. I will list them on the text below because I don't remember the titles off the top of my head. But if you like modern day horror stories that are a little gory, this one might be for you. I finished listening to the audiobook of The Dark Design by Philip Jose Farmer. This is the third book in the River World series. You really do have to read the first two books. That would be To Your Scattered Bodies Go and The Fabulous Riverboat before picking up The Dark Design, because the story in The Dark Design essentially flows from those two first novels. And I learned by reading a preface that The Dark Design is actually the first half of a much longer novel that the publishers made Philip Jose Farmer split up into two, because otherwise it would have been over 800 pages long. And when it was published in the 70s, the publishers ixnayed that idea. But in this science fiction series, the idea is that everyone who was ever born from about 2 million BCE to 2008, and 2008 was the future when this book was originally published in the 70s. So you have every human being that ever lived there. You have some Neanderthal men from very long ago, up to modern day people. And they're all reborn on this river world. They're buck naked, and they're all 25 years old again. And the first story focused on Richard Burton, the famous Victorian explorer who helped discover the source of the Nile. And he appears again in this third volume on his mission to discover who put him on this river world. I was buddy reading this with Gavin at Genre Books. We were trading ideas back and forth on Voxer. And even though this book is exciting and interesting, there's not a whole lot to talk about this book that we did not talk about previously when we read The Fabulous Riverboat. It is a good book, or should I say, is it a good science fiction series that I'm enjoying, and I will pick up the rest eventually. I am working on a project to read some of my favorite works of nonfiction. I finished rereading Mortality by Christopher Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens was a British man, an author, a public speaker, and a non-believer. He was brilliant in portraying all three of those subjects. He was immensely well-read. He could write magnificently in a very quick time, even while under the influences of alcohol. There is a story that is in Mortality that talks about Christopher Hitchens had something like a 2,000 word essay due at the end of the day. And it was mid-afternoon, and he had been drinking substantially. And then after his drinking bout with his buddies, he went back to his abode and typed out a 2,000 word essay right off the top of his head and just submitted it. And it was accepted. And many people thought it was really rather good. He was that kind of an author. But in Mortality, Christopher Hitchens talks about his dealings with throat cancer, the cancer that eventually killed him in his early 60s. And it is his look on life as a non-believer, about what it means to have cancer and knowing basically that you're going to die very soon. When I first read this, when it came out, I thought it was an absolutely brilliant memoir. Upon rereading, I'm a little more disappointed. I don't think anything he said in this book was wrong, or I don't think that I've changed my mind. It's just that sometimes rereading a great book or a favorite book is going to turn out to be disappointing. And I was just disappointed with this reread because sometimes when you enjoy a book, maybe you should just let it sit on the shelf and remember how much you liked it rather than to pick it up again and be disappointed. Unfortunately, there are many cases where you pick up a book to reread and you really do enjoy it the second time or the third time as much as you did the first, and you never know what you're going to get when you reread a book. Disappointment or reliving that excellentness. I listened to the audiobook Attic by Kathrine Dunn. Kathrine Dunn is more famously known for her magnificent novel Geek Love. Attic is her first short novel. It is 134 pages long in the print edition. It is the story narrated by Kay. She is a young woman on her own. She is in Missouri, if I am not mistaken, and she is working for this cult-like group where you have to sell magazine subscriptions. And she sold a magazine subscription to a man who paid with a check. Unfortunately, he wrote the check out to Kay and not the magazine organization, so Kay had to go cash the check herself. It was a bad check, and she gets arrested for passing false checks and is sentenced to prison. And the rest of the book is her experiences in prison. They are surreal to an extreme. I don't think it spreads out too far from what is possible, but prison life is just not something I would ever want to experience. And Kay, she sort of has some mental issues herself. So you're getting that surreal effect when she's talking about Dog's body. And Dog's body is sort of her alter ego, which she uses to accept all the pain in her life. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. Now, did I like this book as much as Geek Love? Absolutely not. But it shows the spirit that Kay Dunn had. She is not your normal author who would write about quaint and happy lives. All the lives that Kay Dunn writes about are twisted and dark. And I do like my authors who go down that route. If you liked Geek Love, I do suggest picking up Attic. If you were not a fan of Geek Love, I don't think you will be a fan of Attic. I'm still reading Swann's Way by Marcel Proust in my mission to read all of In Search of Lost Time for 2025. Not much has happened since last week. I have only read 12 pages per day, and not a lot happens in Marcel Proust. It is all descriptions and ideas. I'm still really liking it, but I'm getting very close to the end of the Combray section, and then I will switch over to the life of Monsieur Swann. I'm getting very close to the end of Against the Day by Thomas Pynchon. This is a buddy read and a group read with my pal Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics and a few other people. Essentially, this is a plotless novel. I think I said this every time I talk about this. Thomas Pynchon was taking mind-altering substances while writing this book. He's still a brilliant author, but it goes nowhere. I'm going to finish it this week, and I'm going to be very glad to put a fork in this book. I'm still reading the collected fictions of Jorge Luis Borges. This week I read The Immortal and The Dead Man. The Immortal was clearly the better of the two stories this week, although The Dead Man was not at all bad. The Immortal is essentially a tale told by a man who has lived for a very long time. He does not die. He considers himself immortal, and it is about his experiences and discoveries of what that means. And I want to read just a very short passage from this short story. There is nothing very remarkable about being immortal. With the exception of mankind, all creatures are immortal, for they know nothing of death. What is divine, terrible, and incomprehensible is to know oneself immortal. I have noticed that in spite of religion, the conviction as to one's own immortality is extraordinarily rare. Jews, Christians, and Muslims all profess belief in immortality, but the veneration paid to the first century of life is proof that they truly believe only in those 100 years, for they disdain all the rest. Throughout eternity, to rewarding or punishing what one did when alive. So essentially he's saying in religions is that you will spend an eternity being punished or rewarded for what you did in maybe your first 100 years of life. How right or how wrong is that? Something to think about. I did finish reading another book, The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, but this was for my in-person book club. This is a library copy, so I can't count the pages towards my challenge. This is a cozy-esque murder mystery set in a retirement home in England. There are some very funny passages in this book. My wife could not stop laughing when she was reading it. I merely thought this book was just okay. That is all that I read in week 12 for the Read What You Own challenge. It comes to 1,242 pages, bringing my total to 14,830 pages, or, if my math is correct, 59.32% of my challenge is now done. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.